Can you start with you stating your name, position, and then a little brief run through of your career history today?
Okay. Bill Roedy, run MTV, VH1, outside America, international headquarters in London as opposed to corporate headquarters in New York. 10 years, basically started MTV Europe, grew that to a nice profitable operation, and then in '94 added the rest of the world, and we've been building ever since. 28 offices around the world, staff of around 1,500 people, 64 different nationalities, which makes it very international, very eclectic, very diversified. We have 20 distinct channels and distinct operations with each separate P&Ls, each headed by a channel head, and more often than not, a local person. So you'll find MTV China, staffed by Chinese people, of course, and headed up by a Chinese president based in Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai. Completely different from any MTV around the world. Likewise, MTV India, MTV Brazil, all in the host language, all in the host music, attitudinally, culturally reflecting the local culture and the local sensibility. So it's really quite a unique product because it changes as you go around the world.
Can you give us a kind of a career history of you, say when you were like 18 or something till now?
18, can't remember that far back, but I have somewhat of an unusual career because I started off in the military. I went to West Point, served as a professional officer for 7 years, which gave me an international flavor, if you will. Lived in Italy for 4 years, never went back to the United States during that entire 4-year period. Was also in Asia for a year, and had a very successful career, which I enjoyed quite a bit, but I knew that it wasn't really for me long term. I always had an interest in television. I memorized the TV guide when I was 6 years old. My mom used to take me around. I would recite the TV guide. Also had a long-term interest in music. So following the Army professional soldier stint, went back to school at Harvard, which gave me a little bit more credibility than I had before, because obviously the military doesn't match up with media too well, except for perhaps the discipline part of it. And went to a company called HBO, worked there for 10 years, and then in a midlife crisis, very comfortable in Los Angeles, decided to take this job 10 years ago, which was probably the best decision of my life.
What are the factors, do you think, that have made MTV successful as a brand here in Europe? And when you were starting out, what was it like to kind of introduce something that at the time was, you know, so unique and so different?
Well, it was different and was unique, particularly at the time. I mean, in hindsight, it looks fairly obvious, but at the time, it was actually very revolutionary, because Europe and the world outside the United States was not used to what we call niche programming. And also, we were trying to do something that was quite unusual at the time, which was pan-regional programming. We have since evolved our strategy to be much more local. But when you come right down to it, the key success factor for MTV internationally, worldwide, is our relationship with the audience, with the viewer. Everything is about the viewer. It's a driving force for everything that we do. And that's behind our localization strategy. We now have 20 different channels around the world. We just launched 3 more this month. We grow all the time. The product evolves to be more and more local to country specific. And it's all about taking advantage of that amazing diversity in the world. It's a product that is quite remarkable because it changes so much. And again, our relationship with the audience is really the driving force behind everything we do. It's the most important thing. It guides us every day.
With having something like a product, like you've got a business that is actually like a brand, like it's kind of like, as I said, I think it's like Coca-Cola. It's something that actually is so successful as a brand. How do you manage something like a brand, and how do you maintain keeping that brand up to the level that you want to keep it to?
Actually, very good question. We, first and foremost, hire very good people. You know, this business, you have to check your ego in, because you have to surround yourself with very high-powered, good people at the local level. And you have to trust them. That's the second part. You have to hand over the reins and trust them. With that being said, however, we do have certain standards and attitudes that we like to look for from the MTV brand. And it's, you know, all about music. It's all about a connection with the consumer. It's young, of course. It's, in some markets, about public awareness, education even, knowledge, particularly in Asia. In the end, it's about lifting the spirit, really, in an entertainment forum, but balancing that with a dose of social responsibility, which we do quite a bit around the world, everything from HIV/AIDS awareness to environmental issues. Anything that's particularly important to the consumer, we do. So the idea is basically to connect with the audience in a very emotional way, because MTV in the end is a very emotional product.
What do you think is the key element of the actual brand, though? Would you say it's its unconventionality, or is it like the fact that there's nothing like it, or is there something, do you think, that is about MTV that no one else has?
There are some universal themes, but I think the overriding part about that is that it connects in a local way, and it can be different. It really can be different. MTV India is almost unrecognizable to someone in MTV Germany, for example. It really does take that local culture and reflect, which is, I think, one of the more exciting things about the product, because in the end, it therefore represents this amazing diversity around the world, and we're able to exchange that diversity. So we bring a little bit of unity as well, in tapping into the local culture and exchanging that programming around the world. We bring a little bit more understanding and even some unity. The common themes of MTV are fairly obvious. It's music, it is youthful, it's connection to fashion and trends. We do some news as well, some movies, style, fashion, anything that has to do with pop culture and trends. And therefore we bring in not only the young audience, but we find people that are outside our target demo, which is really 16 to 34, tap into MTV to find out what the trends are.
That was my next question. In an industry that is so dominated by trends and by what's fashionable and who's in and who's out and all that sort of stuff, from your perspective, is that a difficulty in maintaining a brand like MTV, because it is subject to such, whim, if you like? Right.
The key is hiring young people. We have some things ingrained into the culture. I mean, we do hire good people and also very young people, people with a passion for music. I don't program the channels, obviously. We have music fanatics who are very close to the music scene. But things about the MTV culture that I think help us stay abreast. We encourage people to take risks. Sometimes swim upstream, maybe even break the conventional rules, if you will, in order to get things done. It's a very creative company, so we try and encourage being innovative on a daily basis, and that goes hand in hand with taking risks. We have an intense ambition to be good at what we do, so we're very competitive. And I particularly believe that attitude, you can win with attitude, and it enables you to overcome any sort of lack of resources. Very, very important for us. We also never accept no for an answer, because particularly in the international environment, and when we're developing new businesses, you always have objections or reasons why you can't do something. So ingrained in our culture is never, ever accepting no for an answer.
Excellent. Talking a bit more about your demographic, why, you're saying it's sort of 16 to 34 or whatever. What do you think about it is now that MTV is kind of like a teenager itself? What do you think it is about the outside demographic and about the demographic in the middle that has happened, that has changed to sort of make your audience a lot wider perhaps than it was when you started?
Well, what we do is also launch other products. We have another product, for example, called VH1. Internationally, it's very successful in the UK. We're pretty much everywhere in Europe, and we're looking to expand it in Asia and India. It's for the demographic after MTV. So the idea is, as a viewer graduates from MTV, they go into VH1. We're also segmenting the market even further, because with this great technology of digital transmission, we suddenly have a lot more capacity, so we can launch more channels. So just as an example, in the UK, last week we launched 3 more channels, and we have a total of 6. And not only does it target different genres musically, it also targets different demographics. So we're pretty much now able, with the added capacity that digital transmission provides, to cover many different demographics and also many different genres.
So is that kind of the aim for MTV Networks as a massive corporation? Is it for you basically to dominate the market so that no one else can kind of...
Dominate is not a word we particularly use or even like, but it is, if it's about music, we're going to be there, and if it's about music, we want to win, because again, we're very competitive, and we do have competitive channels, by the way, everywhere in the world, probably 100 or so the last time I counted, which makes it better for us and also for the consumer. It makes us stay on our edge even more. But it's really about covering all the music genres, all the demographics, and when it has to do with music, we want to be number one. I think it's good to take your job very seriously and your work very seriously, but I also think it's very good not to take yourself so seriously. And that means having fun. Having fun and winning through attitude, and having fun by winning through attitude. And that's probably the overriding philosophical, theory, in addition to some of the other things like never ever accepting no for an answer. Perseverance, I think, is so key. And then winning through attitude, because you don't often have all the resources you want. So you have to overcome many obstacles by just attitude. And that's about working as a team and lifting the spirit of your employees and getting on with it, basically, and having fun doing it.
People that work for them.
I think this is probably one of the more exciting times to work, certainly in my work history, coincidentally leading into the new millennium. It's all about speed nowadays. I mean, big is good, but speed is critical. And that speed means you really need to consume mass quantities of information. That's probably my biggest challenge in looking at the world. I wake up every day, and when I look at the world's operations, I find there's invariably a problem somewhere in the world each day. And it's not only about tackling that problem very quickly, but it's also being well-informed and being educated. And that's really the challenge, to consume all this information in an efficient way. And I think also in today's world, you've got to really check your egos in, because you need to adapt. You need to balance the long-term vision and the clarity of a long-term vision with adaptability, and be willing to change your business plan, because things are changing all the time. There's new technological developments every day. There's new deals every day. And even if you go on holiday, you really need to be pretty much in the loop. You need to stay informed. And I think we've seen the days, I think, of leaving the office completely, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I know it does create stress, but the more important thing is you can't sleep, because there's just so much going on. And I find that one of my biggest challenges, just consuming all the information, being able to do it in an efficient way.
Great. So do you think that as a corporation, like, you have to facilitate that in each of your employees, like you also have to have your access to information, but for the people that work for you, what does your corporate culture kind of do to make sure that they can keep up to date, they're up to speed, they know what's going on?
Well, I find that if I'm out of the loop, I think one of the problems of any company today is being able to get information out to as many people as possible. And if I'm out of the loop, that must mean that the majority of the employees are in the dark ages. So I look for that almost as the first symptom to a problem. The challenge is to give this information flow to everybody as soon as possible. In the old days, information was often kept as a source of power, and there's still a human nature to do that. But the challenge, I think, for any leader in a company is to create an open environment and get all the information to all the employees as quickly as possible. It's not about if, it's about how you do that. And that's a real challenge, because it goes against some human nature. And it's also very important not only to get all the information to the employees, but also to get to, particularly in a consumer-driven company like MTV, a consumer-driven product where the product is so emotional, to get the consumer feedback to all the employees as soon as possible so they can make the right decisions.
Do you feel, as a corporate culture, that you have some kind of set of rules that you run by, so that, like, obviously I imagine a lot of the American stuff, conservative parents upset by certain videos that were played on MTV and that kind of thing. Is there like a social responsibility charter or something that's sort of signed up for MTV?
Very much so, because again, particularly in the international environment, we fight stereotypical opinions and views of our channel all the time, because we're always dealing with constituents that are not in the demographic that watches the product. So there's quite a bit of misunderstanding, actually. And if you actually watch the product on any given day, you'll find, of course, first and foremost, the entertainment, the idea of lifting the spirit through music, but you'll also find maybe 6 or 7 different social messages on the air, which are very important. It's not us preaching to the audience, very important part about this. It's more about taking the issues that are important to young people around the world. And there's some common themes around the world. HIV/AIDS spread, environmental, drug abuse perhaps, employment, corruption, whatever. Some are more applicable to other markets than universal. But the key is not us to preach about those issues, but to take those issues and then talk about them. Talk about them in a way, in a style that the audience can relate to. And we realize that because we're now in front of roughly a third of the world's television households in all forms of MTV, there is quite a bit of influence there, and we have to take that very seriously and very responsibly. And that's why we take this social message to a very, very sophisticated level. It's often what our constituents don't know about because, again, they don't watch the channel.
Okay. In such a creative industry as television is, and also especially music, do you think the key to it is the passion to the music business? Do you think that's the key?
I think anytime you have an emotional connection to your audience with a product, and certainly that's what MTV is all about, the emotional connection is very much part of that, and that means passion. And probably one of the common themes, whether you're someone working in Mumbai or Beijing or Jakarta, whatever it is, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, is the passion we have, not only for the music, but also for creativity and also for this connection to our audience. And an appreciation as well, not only the passion for music and lifting the spirit, but an appreciation for the diversity of the world and the openness and really embracing all that.
What's more rewarding for you personally, seeing as you started MTV Europe 10 years ago? Is it to climb to the top or maintaining that level now that you are sort of market leader?
Climbing to the top is somewhat subjective, I think. I think the most rewarding thing for me personally is just to be part of MTV. I'm often asked, I have such a lucky job. In some ways, some people say I have the best job in the world. And I get to meet many different types of people. I mean, whether they're artists, or I met the Queen of England a couple of months ago, I meet heads of state. Someone asked me who I would next like to meet, and I said, who I would really like to meet is every single person who works at MTV, because they are the most interesting people that I deal with. It's that, the people I work with, and also just appreciating all this tremendous cultural diversity around the world and seeing a product change so much. It's very, very exciting. It's never easy managing people. People are the most complicated things, if you will, about an organization. You know, human beings have needs, and it's always complicated. Also, human beings have problems that need to be resolved every day. And I think every company has competition within the company with different departments. And one of the challenges, obviously, for the managers is to reconcile and to mediate sometimes. But I think if you have a mission, and we have a very clear mission around the world, and you have a certain amount of fun in your culture, you're more apt to not have a lot of the conflicts internally. The fun is an important part about it, and music is a great unifier, not only for our audience, but also for our employees.
Is there something that you can say is the biggest lesson that you've learned being in business?
Well, you know, some obvious ones. I think the audience is king. Never take them for granted. Really do everything for the consumer. And in this day and age, as we transition, you know, whatever we call it, to web years or warp speed, this whole internet connection to our society now and how it grows, it makes that connection even more important, because the consumer is less willing to put up with bad service or a product that's overpriced, for example. Margins are going down, and that's a very exciting thing for consumers particularly, but also for us who are participating in it. And I think one of the biggest lessons, certainly in business for me, is that you never take the consumer for granted. Always tap into their mind, and like we do, make it the driving force behind everything you do.
Is there anyone that you can sort of pinpoint who was someone in your life that kind of helped you in deciding perhaps that this is where you wanted to be, and that this is kind of the kind of industry that you want to be, whether it be like a teacher or, I don't know, someone you met at the army, or someone you met on the street, or a video you heard, or is there anything that you can kind of pinpoint?
Well, I actually have quite a few heroes, but I think there's so many of them. As I reflect on that, I think for me, it's not so much about picking any one particular person. I think all of us have an opportunity to be a hero, and depending on how we react to certain situations. And I just like to focus on really the people that we deal with day to day, you know, the employees, which is really my family in many ways. And in their own way, they are heroes every day, and how they solve problems and how they get on with it and how they win and accomplish, you know, their challenges. And, you know, while the world is filled with great icons, and I collect memories of great icons, I think it's more about everybody, all of us, being a hero in their own way. Well, I find for me personally, exercise works quite a bit. But I think the most important thing when it comes to corporate pressure, if you will, and there certainly is that pervasive pressure in any corporation you work for nowadays, is to enjoy your job. If you have a certain amount of enjoyment and fun in what you do, you can withstand quite a bit of stress. It really is quite something. And I love music. I love being able to flirt with history, which is what MTV does around the world. I love the diversity of life as the travel shows me, and that enables me to withstand an awful lot of pressure. And there is pressure, of course, but in the end, music television, it's about lifting the spirit, it's about music, so it's hard to take things too seriously. I go back to what I said earlier, where I take the job very seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously.
Okay, can you kind of paint us a picture of what you think the workplace of the future might be like in terms of the way like day-to-day business operations sort of exist?
Well, technology is having an incredible impact, and we have to be careful that technology doesn't swing the pendulum so far away from the human contact. But certainly part of the future is going to be about this amazing revolution that we're experiencing with the internet and with technology. Information is there now, which is a great thing because we are all so informed. So the challenge becomes efficiently digesting all that information. But it's not only at the workplace. Your workplace now goes wherever you go. I travel probably 40 to 50% of my job, and I have basically a mobile office wherever I go around the world. I'm in contact with email. I get faxes every single day. Even if I'm sitting in a remote area like Cambodia or I don't know, Indonesia or Argentina, I'm still in contact every single day, and in fact, every single hour through voicemail or through email. And I think that's a lot what's going to define the future as that even gets better.
Okay, what personal skills and qualities do you think that you have as a person that have made your success?
I think listening is very important. And being there for problems with your employees. It's, for me, first and foremost, about the people that work at MTV and being able to help and encouraging to take risks and make mistakes, because mistakes happen all the time. I make probably a dozen mistakes a day. The idea is to learn from those mistakes. And also attitude, encouraging people to, if they feel outgunned, you can overcome anything with attitude. I think those are some of the more important things I like to instill.
Do you find that a difficult kind of talking about that attitude aspect? Because I'm from Australia, obviously, so the English culture is quite different from where I'm from, but similar in certain ways. That whole attitude, that's a very kind of American sort of style of thinking. Do you think that's kind of a European? Do you think Europe has changed in that? Do you think they've picked that up a bit more and are a bit more forthright?
Well, it's a good question, because culturally around the world, your attitude, if you will, changes. The culture has a around the world. Yeah, we've chosen to locate the international headquarters for MTV in London, and that has its pros and cons. But on the pro side, which is really ultimately what I went for, is it's much easier to manage Asia, for example, because you're closer in time zone. You can talk to them easier in the same day. Also, you can travel to Asia and Europe, of course, much easier while based in London. And then finally, by being co-located with your European headquarters or operation, which is the most mature operation in the world, I think, for most businesses, you're right there where it's happening. And I think to be in an international location makes a good statement, too, the fact that you're with an international operation. Of course, the consequence of that is your communication with New York or with the corporate headquarters, wherever it is. And again, it's incumbent on you to make sure that happens. We have things like video conference, which makes it much easier. Also, I travel quite a bit to New York, which helps as well. So I think in today's age, one of the key challenges, certainly for me, is keeping abreast of everything. The information overload is incredible, and to do that in an efficient way is a big, big challenge. And I have a number of different ways I try and do that, one of which, of course, are channels like CNBC. And I will typically tune in at night. I get the market wrap from stock markets around the world, which I find very helpful. And also, in some ways, necessary, again, just to keep abreast of this incredible amount of information.
Okay. And can we now just get you to say something in general about business information, and we try and get you to say something without actually using the word CNBC?
Okay, sure.
Perhaps if you sort of talk about, you know, the niche aspect of a channel like, you know, we're like the FT or something. On television, like, you know, it's important, the amount of television there is available, that you can kind of directly hit something like CNBC and catch, you know, what you want at any time that you want, rather than having to go to, you know, a news channel,
okay,
a business channel.
Okay, okay. One of the exciting things about our industry is that it provides now a lot of choice for a consumer. And that choice, at least from my perspective, is very necessary, because there are times, any time during the day, when I want to get business information, I want to get news from around the world. And it's critical not only to me personally, but also in how I conduct my business. And the idea to have a channel, you know, whether it's a niche channel or something, you know, that's, scratch that. Let me start over again. Let's see, where should I start from? Oh, okay. So again, we're talking about just getting information. Okay, great. So in my job, which is around the world perspective, it's critical that I get information from all parts of the world, and I can do that anytime during the day. And one of the great things about satellite cable technology is that there are now channels that you can go to anytime during the day and find information, whether it's economic or business or just world news, and tap into that, which I find not only good, but also necessary.
I reckon that's fine. That's cool. Okay, back to normal question time. Just the idea of business as a thing like sport or reading or whatever, is it like a game to you? Is it an adrenaline thing? Are you like an adrenaline junkie on business? Do you love it? Something you really want to get your teeth into? Or how do you kind of feel about it?
I think you have to enjoy what you're doing, and as long as you enjoy what you're doing, you have that rush, I suppose, of adrenaline. And I've had the good fortune to be in a military career and a business career, and there's an analogy there, and that is that the military, you're trained for war, and business, you're also, in many ways, trained for war. The difference is that in the military, typically you're not fighting. In business, you're fighting every single day. Pardon?
I think that was a fantastic soundbite. Are there any other ambitions that you have left in life that you'd like to succeed with, apart or with MTV?
Yeah, well, apart from MTV.
With MTV.
I mean, well, basically, MTV is very much work in progress. Even though we're in front of 300 million households, in many ways the growth is still ahead of us. We have a lot more channels to launch, not only genre specific, but also demographic specific and geographical around the world. We have the infrastructure in place for growth, but again, we have quite a bit of growth right ahead of us. So for me, it's doing all that and just taking from the enjoyment of that. And that really is, in many ways, a 24-hour job. But I'm also blessed because I can balance that with what I call social responsibility. And I do quite a bit of work, for example, with UNAIDS. I'm an ambassador with UNAIDS, and that fits very much into my job because HIV infection, for the first time in 1998, the majority of new infections were 16 to 24 demographic, and that's MTV's audience perfectly. So it's not so much about me, it's really about me being able to deliver the MTV organization to help in the fight against the spread of HIV and AIDS around the world, and that's something that I want to devote more time to as well.
Okay. Do you have like a personal motto?
Some of the things I've said in the past, I think if you ask other people, they would say never accepting no for an answer. Don't be afraid to take risk and make mistakes. Swim upstream if it's necessary. And then again, attitude. You can accomplish amazing things with attitude.
Okay. And if you were to start your career all over again, would you have done anything differently?
I don't think so. I feel quite blessed. I think a lot in life is down to luck, and I feel very lucky. The opportunity to work with MTV and to be in my job and be surrounded by music, young people, lifting the spirit, is quite something. I feel quite blessed by that. And also to be doing it at this time when there are so many changes. I think all the excitement is here. It's in front of us. I'm very optimistic about the future. I don't think we've seen anything yet. One of my other models is fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be a great ride.
Awesome. And the final question. Basically, when you started out into business and you were a young man, did you ever think that, like, okay...
I'm still a young man.
In the end,
young at heart.
Definitely. Will be, okay, at 55, I'm going to retire, I'm going to go to a desert island, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to chill out. Is that kind of is that what you're kind of working towards in the end, is to not be working, or do you think that you're going to be working way into the next morning?
No, I'm definitely the latter. Work is very much part of my life. And
time required is
sure.
particularly prominent. Okay.
I'm very much the latter. Well, I see work continuing on as long as work will have me, if you will. Life is about an amazing amount of choices, and there's so many things that all of us would like to do. I would like to write a book. I would like to work out more. I would like to take, perhaps more time with the children. But in the end, I'll be balancing that with work. And the overriding choice for me will be to be involved, particularly because I'm so lucky to be working in a company like MTV, is to be involved in this great, great industry, media, taking advantage of the revolution of internet, things moving very quickly. So I see that on into the sunset, for me personally. This is probably one of the more exciting times to work, certainly in my work history. It's all about speed nowadays. I mean, big is good, but speed is critical. It's good to take your job very seriously and your work very seriously, but I also think it's very good not to take yourself so seriously. You've got to really check your egos in, because you need to adapt. You need to balance the long-term vision and the clarity of the long-term vision with adaptability, and be willing to change your business plan, because things are changing all the time. In today's age, one of the key challenges, certainly for me, is keeping abreast of everything. And I have a number of different ways I try and do that, one of which, of course, are channels like CNBC. And I will typically tune in at night. I get the market wrap from stock markets around the world, which I find very helpful. I'm very optimistic about the future. I don't think we've seen anything yet. Fasten your seatbelts, because it's going to be a great ride.